Let me bring this so I can give you an introduction. One of the reasons why folks find it hard to comprehend when you're working with numbers and you're working with algebra and such of negative numbers is one thing that we always have to remember. Numbers are not basic numbers, are just not numbers. Numbers have a history. But where do numbers come from? I want to show you this chart. This chart here, actually, this is called, now let us go back to before this. Let me show you this one here. This is called the number line. This is actually dealing with positive and negative numbers. This is called coordinates. This is basic algebra. Algebra 1. This has from 1 to 7, 1 to 7, 1 to 7, 1 to 7. On the y-axis, positive, and the x-axis, positive. But if you notice something, you can actually use this number line to prove whatever I say here. But the only shortcoming we have is that when I get this number line, I only put it to 7 on both sides. So for me to really do it to 8, it would be a conflict. But if you really want to understand, and you can draw a number line like this, this is called, use this when you're doing quadratic algebra with coordinates. But really and truly, what this is, let me give you the background of it. You use this every day when you use your GPS, your ground position satellite. This is what you use in the military if you are going to be using this to launch missiles. It would be actually be flat. But because I can't show it to you flat, I have to show it to you in a vertical manner. So this is actually called the number line. And you can actually find out, you can add, let's say you want to take away, if you want to find out anything that we were just talking about before, for positive 4 and negative 4. You can come and you can count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But the problem we have, like I said, only to 7, so we don't have 8. But let's say we can have 16. You can count all the way from 4. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you can get your answers. But the only thing, this is division. But what I did was to prepare this for you, just so you can get a basic idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about positive and negative numbers using the number line. I'm going to show you how to use this in another episode, because this is not really what I want to get at. What I really want to get at is to explain to you what numbers are all about. Have you ever wondered where numbers came from? And when we use the word numbers, what we actually do, especially when it comes to mathematics. Mathematics is what is called, in discipline, mathematics a science. Mathematics is science used to solve conjecture. Now I try to break it down so that will not be convoluted. So let's look at it in this term, because we're going to get to the origin of what you call numbers, and that's why I put this part here. This part here may look kind of funny, but for you to really comprehend what I'm saying, This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. There's no tens. We'll get to that part later. This is 0. And 0, let's go back here, it's right in the middle. That's what we call the origin. So 0 is actually called the origin. So mathematics, let's keep it straight, is a science used to solve conjecture. What is conjecture? I have it here, but let's deal with the word science first because I want to take you back and forth. But I don't want to deal with mathematics because then I will be getting too far ahead. So let's deal with the word science. Mathematics is a science. When we say mathematics is a science, what we're talking about. I went all the way back to the history of numbers and whatnot. So let's see science. The word science is actually first known in the 1400s. You see that 14 and the C? Around the 1400s, around the 14th century. But the C stands for century, so you call it around the 14th. But science is defined as the state or fact of knowing. So the word science really has a Greek connotation when it comes to mathematics. So it really says science is actually a synonym for the Latin word that comes from the word scientific. And it's an active verb that means or alludes to or actually another synonym for the word knowing. To know. Science is based on stated facts or of knowing what is known. I use right over here is the word fact, F-A-C-T. What distinguishes a fact? Let's bring it further so you can see. A fact has one foundation, but it has three what is called tenets. A fact has a foundation of who, when, and where. Who did it, when it happened, and where it happened. But also, the who has to do with the actions. And when we come further down, you see I have arrows here. The act have to be based on seeing that's equal to observation or observing. But the seeing, this observation also has its own tenets. It's where it was done. The doing, where it was done or redone. That is called trial. So therefore, science is really a verb that really was established in the 12th century. But in the 1400s, you know, like Christopher Columbus discovered the New World, 1492. That's the time when everything was being reevaluated. Just before the 1400s, you had what they call the Renaissance, that really started from medieval times, really about 1,000 years, 1,000 as opposed to 14. And after that, the Renaissance, that really is a word that means when, that will be alluded to when the world after come out, the Dark Ages, we are called medieval history, and the whole world, the Western world, or all Europe, was going through a refashioning that is called, that you will call the Renaissance. But all of that is when around the 14th century, but most of this was done long before the 14th century. It started around the 12th century. So, in the Western world, even though English was not a predominant language, because English is not as old as most people get taught, English got its codification when the British were in control. and you had the British Empire starting from the 1600s really into the 1800s, where you know it was United States. Well, the three colonies we got independence from England here in the United States. So what I'm trying to bring you back to let you see how all of this new mathematics was born with what you call the Renaissance. So here you see mathematics is a science to use to solve conjecture. I want to break it down for you that so when you get to look at how numbers were created, because there's nothing such as numbers. I'll get you that you can understand. So you use math as a science. Science comes from the word scientific, which means an active verb, which means to know, or a synonym that is actually saying known, to know, or knowing. And you know things by observation, and they have to be a trial and a retrial. And once you get the consistent answer, then you know that that creates a fact. Where it was done, when it was done, and who did it. Okay, so let's go to conjecture. Conjecture, if you put the T-U-R-E and displace it, that is called a suffix that onto the word, you could put, so you get the word conjure. You can conjure up stories. Most stories that conjure up, they have no basis, they have no factual part. Let's see what they say. You have conjecture, and it can be a noun, or it can be a verb. A very passive noun. So the noun part will become from interpretation of signs, dreams, and omens. Now, I want you to keep this in mind, signs and omens. Let's go to the conjecture that was used as a verb. It's based on opinions, a notion that has rested on what's called probabilities. So let me give this to you when you say probabilities. Let's say you had a bag and the bag contained 7 red marbles, 3 blue marbles, and 6 yellow marbles. I can create a formula or ask you a question that what is most likely that when you put your hand into the bag you're going to pull out? What is the probability that when you put your hands into the bag you're going to pull out 1 blue marble? You can write an equation for that, but you can come up with an answer. You don't have to think about the answer. I'm just giving you this concept of probabilities. So conjecture, even though it's not really based on numbers only, conjecture have to do with opinions, notions. They're not really ideas. They're you coming to your own ideas, but these ideas have to be based on facts. So what I try to see here, I went to the word pagan. There's a reason why. Before what we have is numbers. All numbers derive from what is called digits. Digits, D-I-G-I-T-E-S, digits. And there's only 9 digits, from 1 to 9. 0, I'll give you the history about 0 ones, but 0 actually does not mean anything. There are only 9 digits, which give you all of what you know, what is called numbers. Digits are like letters. Once combined in the correct sequences, they are referred to as numbers. Let me give you another way of looking at it. There's no millions. A million is 1 plus 6 zeros times 6 zeros with commas that put them in different places and place them in what is called a millionth with the th at the end place. So a million is 6 zeros with a 1 in front, separated by 2 commas, or you can separate it by what is called periods. But I don't like to use such a word because commas is much easier for you to remember. So millions, you don't have to call this a million. You can call it 1,000,000. It's six zeros on a wall. So if we look at what is called digits, how did digits become numbers? In old ancient time, what you call pagan times, where the Christians use, you may hear the word pagan. What does pagan, when you use the word pagan, what are you really trying to say? I'm taking you back to the 13th century, when humanity was young and we were natural. The word pagan actually has another word that is a synonym, and that actually means the word rustic. You know, like you have a piece of metal or metal chairs, and after a while they get oxidation and they start to like rust. It's really come from a natural process. So in Latin, when you use the word pagan and you go back to the 13th century, you're already talking about rustic. And it really comes from the word pagus, P-A-G-U-S, which really is another way of saying country dwellers or country dwelling, as opposed to in citadels where we get the word city from. And when everybody comes together and it seems to have marketing and what we call industrialization. Before that, in humanity, unless you were trying to build dynasties or empires, most people live very humble, simple lives. So they were called rural, or it was called village, where families would come together and commune. And in paganism actually means the natural way of living. So you get the word like a city dweller, like a person who lives in the country, where most things would be in its natural form. So to take these natural ideas that were simple, what they call very simple ideas, and they created what you call signs. That's why I put the word right here when we put the signs and omens. I leave the word dream out because we don't want to deal with that part. So what's a sign? Number one is a sign. Number two was signs. Most of this came, you will not believe, from squares, triangles, and rectangles. If you look at these what appears to become the modern day writing of numbers, this look more like a Z. This look like an N upside down. The 5, if you look at it, you can actually get a triangle from it. The 6 can be put together to give you 2 squares, and the 7 can be a square if you bring the line straight down and join. And the 8 is actually an X, but if you put them together, you can get what you call a rectangle. The same thing with a 9. 0 always have the origin, and this is when we use the word omen, what we are talking about is the control of the psyche. It's making things appear to be what they may look like, but really they are not what they really are. So how can we distinguish when this is really 2? This is 3, this is 4, this is 5, 6, 7, on and on. Now, if you look at these, what I call these signs or omens, you will see that they have angles. One, the way it was written, as in ancient times, it was just a stroke, one stroke down, vertical stroke, but it had a hook going to the left. So that hook would be based on a triangle way, but it's not like a triangle because it's just a very small hook. But that hook would give you an angle. And since there was no other hooks, no other angles, it was one angle, so you get the letter 1. Number 2 was shaped like a Z. You see the Z? Notice that right here, this blue part that I put next to, I put actual omen or the sign in red, but I put the blue ink at the vertex, where the vertex meet, where where you have like an angle, like would be a 30 or 35 degrees angle. So you have, notice there are 1, 2 angles. And the 2 signify that this is only 2, that is represent what is called the digit 2. Now, digits are what you call also almonds. In some languages, you don't have letters. Like in Chinese, they call Mandarin. If you look at certain languages, if you were to study Egyptology, they didn't deal with numbers. They dealt with half, wholes, and quarters. Because you can get and they use circles in most of in their symbols. I mean, I'm not talking about the hieroglyphics and whatnot that you see in modern Egypt. I'm talking way before that, like the Nubians, when Ethiopia actually was run by, some of you like to say Akhenaten, one of the gods of Egypt. I'm talking about all the way back now, about 4,500 years of history, 4,000 years ago, when all this was born. Most of this was done by the Phoenicians and made a new calendary concepts on this, working with numbers based on shipping and trading and whatnot. This is what all of this is born of. The natural flow of humanity in different areas of the earth, who use their own symbols and signs and omens in order to express their societies. All of this was controlled when it was created, when the concept of empires came about. The first empire, Babylon, and then you had the second empire that was placed by the Assyrians. Then you had the Syrians being defeated by the Greeks. Then you had the Roman Empire. Then you had the German Empire, we call it Germanica. And then you had the British Empire. And then you have this modern day empire that splits into the United States and the Russian Caucasus. That's a different subject. But if you notice, to distinguish how you can get these numbers and these, before, let me see, if you go back to about 3,000 years, humanity, if you think, were more sophisticated, because the 7 science that we have established today was always existed, but they were not used by the simple man, because as a person who was a planter or farmer, he didn't need to deal with 1,000 or 5,000 or 5 million or those funny numbers. What Moses is dealing with was what today is called, on the algae culture, the culture of creating algae, planted food, and that. All they wanted to make sure they deal with the moon cycles, the seasons, and they will use what we call today astrology. They will use astronomy. Astrology is a perversion of astronomy that has to deal with the creation of humanity and the creation of seasons, summer, winter, fall, and you get what I'm saying. So we didn't need all this sophisticated, if we want to use such a word. I don't like to use that word because sophisticated just means to take away from naturality. But what you call the number system came out of a natural way of signs and omens. And they were not used by the average person, if you want to say that, because they were used by the people who want to control, that set up citadels and set up government structure and create what they call civics control over territories, and then you get kingship, and then you get all those governors and whatnot. The average individual 3,000-4,000 years ago, they didn't really care about that, because that was not, they had a complete different system. They followed a system because they were the agrarian people, number one, and they were not whole land, because they know that X amount of time, certain months, the land would go through changes. Like certain parts of India, we've got the monsoon rain, certain parts of the Middle East, you have sandstorms. So they never want a whole land as their ownership. It's when the modernizers start building citadels and trying to put humanity into certain areas that they can be controlled by some far government that never really controls anything. But if you get what I'm saying, so all of this concept of the number theories started with digits, and they're only 9 digits. Forget 100,000, 5 million, these zillion. They're really, a matter of fact, most people don't have a clue when you talk about past a million, what you're talking about, or what is being spoken about. Or people may have a comprehension of 100,000, but when you go deeper, you're talking over the average. So there are only 9 digits, which give all the numbers, only 9 digits, which give all of what we call numbers. Digits are like letters. You put 1 next to 2, you can call it 12. Huh? Or you put 1 next to 3, you call it 13. Now, if you go back to the number system where you get units, tens, hundreds, thousands, likewise, all of that came out through governmental structure because they want to make it appear that they're sophisticated that they can have 100,000 things. And most of the time it was stolen from the simple man. The man did the work. But anyhow, so when we come to signs, omens, and numbers, they have a lot in common. It's really the bewitching of humanity to a certain degree, because that's why a lot of people want to say, I want to be a millionaire. You're never going to be a millionaire. If you ever have the wish to be a millionaire, it means that you don't have a clue how to be a millionaire. Because if you want to be a millionaire and you had the imagination, you will already be a millionaire. I'm just using that as an example. So that's why we look at the signs. And if you look at this 4, you see the shape of this 4, actually a triangle with a leg and another angle going to the left. And inside these angles, the vertex, they will make a vertex where they make it meet together, and they will count the amount of angles. So this 4 will have 1, 2, 3, 4 angles. 5 is actually a rectangle that is really the side that is divided into 2 triangles, but instead of having the total triangle, they break it apart. So you will end up having 1, 2, 3, 4 angles, but they give you a little kick at one or the left side of the sign, because these are not numbers, these are signs or omens to work with your psyche, and it will count it as 5. These came about after the Renaissance, and around the 13th century, 14th century, when they give you the concept of establishing a new world, which is called, it was done by the kings of France, Spain, and the British Empire. And that was established, starting what we call the Caribbean, all those areas. And all of this was brought into what you call new types of education. The word education is a very funny word, because the word education really comes from the word educare, which is Latin. It means to point to. In other words, you point a society into using your, what is called one of the 7 sciences that involve numerology, and you teach them how to use governance or control through government structure, and then you can point the society and have it going in a direction, not a direction that's going to a place. It's more psychic. It's more imaginary, like democracy, capitalism, socialism, and all the other ism that never really exists. So all that have to do with mathematics. And when you begin to see mathematics not as really a tool, but a kind of concept, because like I said, mathematics is a science used to solve conjecture. Conjecture, if you take the TURF, it comes from conjurer. And that's why I give you the word conjurer, have to do with Latin certifus, the active verb of knowing. Right? Of knowing, and knowing have to have a foundation. The foundation have to be based on facts. The facts has 3 tenets: who, where, and when. But the who also must have another personality, the action of what is happening. And by understanding, by seeing what is action, seeing is observing. Observing also have 3 tenets: do, doing, and what was done. But the doing or the redone that is used in science It's called trial. You try something, you see the results, you retry it, you get the same results, you retry it. And most of the time, if you notice they have 3 arrows, if you do something 3 times and it gives you the same result over and over, chances are what you are doing is proving a fact that it actually happens. So, but numbers are not factual, because numbers did not came from no anything. Numbers came from science. And these signs are, that's why I put the word pagan. They come to the natural progression of humanity trying to solve the puzzles of life and using natural things that existed in order to use to convey not language but his intelligence. Language is a very funny thing because there are different languages on the earth, and most of them are just from 3 basic language tree: Latin, Germanic, and Greek. Despite what the year, you may have other languages like Hindu. The Hindus will have their own language. You have in the Middle East, Mesopotamia, as it's called. You may have Hebrew. You may have Jewish. But a lot of these languages overlap, and they have Arabic, but they're really from one language tree. The English language has a big lot of branches, but it's really into so much different, what you call I don't use the word language because language is also another funny word. Language actually came from land gauge. If you look the word, you take it off the G off, it's really talking about land gauge. And what that history of that word means, when you go into a strange continent or strange land, the people communicate. But they use not language, they use what you call utterance or dialect that is not familiar with you. Like you go to a place where you go to India and you got over Sanskrit, or you have Sanskrit before India was called India. You had it's called what you call the Indus Valley. And if you were to listen to them, you wouldn't understand nothing that they're saying. But they still have their own alphabet. And I don't like to use the alphabet because the word alphabet is also a new word that was done by the Romans. But they have what they call, well, I like to use the word etymology. They have their own etymology and their own line and their own structure of dialectic. But in modern times, actually, when you use the word language and dialect, you're saying the same thing. But because of the English language is so confusing and you can't really say what you really want and what you mean, you have to say what you have to use what you call idioms in order to try to convey a thought that you can't really convey, because that's why you can go to different parts of the earth and people can use what their language, the same language like English, and you could be dumbfounded if you go to Hong Kong, if you go to parts of London, if you go to parts of Wales, you go to parts of Ireland, and you might figure, I'm American, you can't speak English. Americans don't speak English. American English came from Webster Dictionary. And Webster Dictionary was started as a comic in order to appease those people that they called the Pilgrims that was kicked out of England, France, and Scotland during the 1600s when King James, and King James before him you had Queen Elizabeth, and you had before that you had Edward, her father, who broke away the papacy and destroyed what you call the Vatican councils. That's a different story. But all of that, and then the Vatican with the papacy and the rule of its domination through what you call medieval history. You're talking about 10th century all the way back with peasantry, and it's so beautiful. Because one thing I want to also say, mathematics, if you really begin to understand mathematics, you have to become a person that don't want to have a special language. Because mathematics is what you call universal, and it has so much dialectic that you would have to learn what I always say, a little linguistic. Because the Greeks, the Greeks, if you go back to Greece, they didn't use what we call language as it is. Most if you just want to understand what I'm saying, just go to Greek writings and look to see if you can even comprehend anything you say. Or if you look at Latin, the only person that used Latin that I can use to give you an example is the papacy. When Pope Francis speaks, unless he speaks Latin. And Latin is what's called a dead language because it's based on the Gories and it has a demonic concept. But English was not really, if you study Old English, Middle English, and when English was, not even English like about the Norman conquest. So mathematics will take you so far back into history that you will not only be able to comprehend numbers and the number sign and the number tree, that you will start realizing, oh, you go into a rabbit hole and you will not be able to get out. Like I'm trying to take you so far back that you probably have lost you when I was just talking about adding negative and positive numbers. But I'm going to leave this here because I don't want to go too far. What I'll do is give you another module with mathematics. And as I say, we were doing positive and negative numbers. So based on that, we show you how you can add, multiply, subtract, and divide positive and negative numbers. And I give you the three basic signs of mathematics: multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And for my next show, I'll take you further and give you a lot of other things that you may never know. What I did prepare for my next show, a lot of us are very deficient when it comes to simply multiplication. So I set what you call a table rod, and I started from 1 to 30 in a vertical sense and a horizontal sense. So if you want to know, based on this, that I have not finished yet, I'm going to finish it later on. Let's say you want to know 3 times 48, and you don't have a clue. I can teach you how you can write a table, and you can take as much numbers as you want. You can go from 1 to 100, but you have to done vertical and horizontal in order to give you, so you'll be able to count in 15s, in 14s. You can count in 20s, 12, like 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72. And if you, because one thing they have done with us in school, they have stopped us at 12, 12s. The average person who asked them 12, 12, they will know, oh, 144. That's if they know. Try asking them 14, 12s. And they will look at you as though, oh my God, 14, 12. They'll be lost. So what I decided to spend some time and write a table of it's called a multiplication table. That if you were to sit down and write this out from 1 to 30, from 1 to 30, you can come and you can say 30 30s. And you can just look at it and you'll be able to not guess, because you can count from 1 to 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 29 to 30. And then that's vertical. And then you can do the same thing horizontal from 1 to 30. But then you start to count from 2, 3, 4, and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 3, 6, 9, 12, 4, 8, 12, 16, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 6, 12, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. In that way that you can count straight down from 1 to 30 or from 1 to 40 in 40s, in 39s. So you can count 28, 43, 56, 70. That is, now every time you count, let's say you want to know 6 times 14. You can go to 6 and you go straight over to 14. 6 times 14 is 70. But if you get to comprehend digits, you don't necessarily have to get a calculator and calculate 7 times 30, 7 times 35. You get what I'm saying, 7 times 31, 33. What you can do, you can learn numbers, digits, how digits relate to each other. I'll give you an example. If you want to count from 4 all the way to 120, 4 30s is 120. But you can start to see patterns, because all you're actually doing, if you start from the 4, 4 2s are 8, you just add 8. You add 4 all the time. 4 2s are 8 and 4 is 12, right? 3 4s are 12 and 4 is 20. I mean, you keep going on. 4 would be 16. 5 would be 5 will be 20. Let's go back to 4, and next will be 20. You're able to count in 4s, then you count in 5, you count in 6, you count in 7, and you will be able to count from 7, 1 is 7, up to 7 30s, 210. And you don't have to deal with memories because most of you haven't done this, so you're not remembering. You are learning to think and relate numbers that don't exist, but you are turning digits into numbers. So that's why I explained to you here with the number line. If you go back to your number line, say in quadratic algebra, where you have the number line and you have coordinates, as we use on your GPS, your ground position satellite. This is used as much as you can find a place, but the coordinates doesn't give you a position on the ground. You have to go to another branch of algebra that's called quadratic algebra and coordinates, where you can find 2 points on a graph. And this is actually a graph, x-axis, y-axis, negative and positive. Until you begin to comprehend these things, you will be lost with what is called true mathematics. You will be able to count from 1 to 12, 1 to 10, 1 to 100, but you will not have a good comprehension about mathematics. And like I said, mathematics is the science to solve conjecture. Conjecture has to do with opinions, notions, and possibilities. And the word mathematic in Latin comes from the word mathemia. In Greek, mathema. All these words sometimes it has a mathematic, which is to separate, which is pertaining to learning. To learning what? Learning, it's actually intelligence. How to think, or how to be analytical. You cannot learn to think and be analytical by using memories. Memories are just a way to keep you stagnated. And if you don't know, because you never see, then you have no memories. But you have to learn to think. And what is thinking? Thinking is being able to analyze any given circumstance based on past experience. So what again, you have to be able to manage these things, because that's why a lot of folks find themselves in quandary. And math is all around you. Everything is mathematics. You go to the market to purchase some food, you go to the doctor to test your blood test, and you go to rent a car, you want to know how tall you are, you want to know how much room in your house, you want to know, okay, need X amount of room. It's called square footage. You want to know how fast, how distance to get from point A to point B. Math is even more, math is used even more than language, because you don't even have to say much. You can demonstrate by just using your intelligence, your speeding, when it comes to speed, when it comes to so much things. So mathematics and math can solve conjecture. That is used to solve conjecture. Conjecture comes from the word conjurer. A conjurer creates stories that have nothing to do with reality. You can think they're real. 90% of the things that you believe is not real, or 95%. They may be real because you believe them. And there's no way you can prove it unless you're an engineer, or unless you're a person who can demonstrate it through mathematics. Like if I ask you how old you are, you could tell me you're 50, I just want to know when you were born. The date, and the date, the year. I don't have to care about the day. And then I can do my mathematics and I can know, okay, you don't have to tell me another word. And a lot of different things like that. That's why. So I hope you enjoy my channel. I think I went too far and went too deep down. But nevertheless, I'm going to show all this, so you don't have to break it up into modules. Anyhow, this is Elvis Marshall Report, and you're watching my math channel. Until my next episode, like, share, And if you want to subscribe, I'll be out.